there's going to come a point where you're already aware of the things that have been bothering you. You're already aware of what's been keeping you miserable, what's been keeping you trapped and suffering. And you're going to realize that there's no more analyzing to be done. There's no more lines to be drawn. There's no more connections to be made. There will be in the future. But right now, you're probably at a point where we need to, in a way, learn to forget about our wounds. And this is what I mean by that. We don't have to forget what they taught us. We don't have to forget that they exist. But in a way, we have to allow ourselves to forget that they're there. You don't heal a wound by constantly picking at it and poking it. You heal it by letting it be. And after you find out what caused that wound, after you found out why it is, it's time to let it go and leave it alone for a little bit. I think sometimes we get too hung up on the title of healing that we forget that forgetting about it and enjoying ourselves is a part of healing. It's okay to laugh while that wound is still there. It's okay to let go while that wound is still there. Healing and happiness can coexist. And a lot of times we fall under this certain paradigm of, oh, right now I'm healing. I have to be serious. I have to, constantly be analyzing and self-observant. But that was never the point of whatever happened. And that's not the point going forward either. If you constantly are analyzing, if you're constantly observing, you're going to be stuck in that state. And after a while, it stops serving you. It doesn't really do anything for you anymore. At a certain point, you're just reading into things more than they ever even existed. To be honest, once you understand, things are quite simple. Once you start to grasp the complexity of the issue that is at hand, from that point on, much of, the path forward is rather not allowing that wound or whatever we're trying to heal to get in the way of us living our life. Because oftentimes that's what healing is. In the long span of things, we spend a significantly shorter amount of time actually nurturing that wound and healing that wound rather than it self-sabotaging us and getting in the way of the life that we actually want to live. So it's less about what more do I have to figure out and more about how am I not still living my life to the fullest capacity? How am I still not taking advantage of every way in which I can enjoy my life because I believe that I owe some sort of responsibility to this certain wound? And obviously I'm talking about emotional wounds here. I'm talking about psychological things that we're harboring, whether that be something we think about every day or deep in our unconscious, whatever it is. Where are we holding back and where are we not allowing ourselves to fully live, to fully exist without having to completely, adjust to those wounds? It's in the same way I talk about fear and anxiety all the time, where if you're about to make a decision and you have to account for fear and anxiety first, you're not making a decision from the right place of mind. The whole point is that we make the decision first, completely removed from any sort of emotional impulse. And then we learn to sit through the fear and anxiety of that choice. And in facing the fear and anxiety, in facing that discomfort, we become stronger, we become more tolerant to all that life may throw at us. If you're waiting for that certain feeling, for that certain wound to pass before you start enjoying your life, you're going to be waiting forever. Because it passes as a result of us actually moving. We pass through life, and in a way, the wound passes us in another direction. Nothing passes without movement. So we have to first move. We have to first start making an effort. We have to first, take a step in that dance, the dance of life, the dance of reality, play the game. And then that wound can slowly start to patch itself up without constantly being picked and poked at. And notice as I bring up the topic of forgetting, what comes to your mind when I say you can just forget about it? And there could be a relatively logical response, whereas someone might say, how can I forget something so traumatic? Or how can I forget something that caused me so much emotional damage? And the point I'm making here isn't that forgetting about it makes it insignificant, but rather forgetting about it actually honors it in a way that ruminating on it never did. By forgetting it, allowing yourself to forget it, allowing yourself to live in the present moment, to lose yourself in the motions of life, because that's okay. It's okay to lose yourself in life. That is how we find new aspects of who we are. We're always so scared to make the next mistake. We're always so scared to do the next thing wrong. But that's the whole point. And there will be more wounds that are in need of healing. And the point isn't to, develop some sort of protective armor where we never end up wounded, but rather we understand that wounds are a part of life. And that as a result of experiencing life to greater degrees, experiencing more stressful, anxiety-induced environments, that we become not less susceptible to experiencing hurting, but we heal a little bit faster, often. Obviously, unless, there's something that deeply traumatic that occurs that requires us to exist in a different state and assign more time. But for the most part, we grow rather quick at healing these things because we're constantly exposing ourselves to life. And when you're constantly exposed to life, you run into a series of challenges that are always going to be thrown your way. So think about it now. When I say you're allowed to forget about it, what comes to mind? The chances are it could be quite cloudy, right? A little bit of fog pops up because you can't even imagine yourself right now without having to constantly deal with that thing as a sort of part of your life. But you can exist and you can be the type of person where that feeling isn't constantly dictating your choices. You can exist in a state of mind, in a state of being, where you actually never even think about that before making a choice or a decision. And I know that sounds far-fetched right now, but as a result of consistently implementing this new sort of awareness, this new sort of mindset, those feelings become less intense and our brain prioritizes them significantly less. But how does this look? Let me give an example. If you're going to make a choice, and let's say there's, a bunch of different opinions kind of firing in your mind. There's like a table of beliefs, a table of opinions, and you're listening to all of them, and you're sort of using deductive reasoning to make a choice. How much am I going to enjoy this experience? How uncomfortable is it going to make me? These are two opposing factors that come to mind, and we have to notice how much weight does the opinions of fear, anxiety, past trauma, how much weight do those opinions that are sitting at the table have on the decision that we're about to make? And then after that, if we notice that a significant amount of attention is being put to those opinions, we also need to acknowledge that what are the circumstances in our life right now and how might have that come about as a result of listening to fear and anxiety far too often. Look at your life now, look at the things that have been set up and positioned in your life, and how is that a reflection of your own inner state? Have we truly grown? Have we truly been healing? Or have we been negotiating and avoiding the things that make us truly uncomfortable? If it's not difficult, it's not going to provide growth. If it's not difficult, it's not going to provide you inner freedom. It needs to be difficult. That's the whole point. If it's not difficult, you probably worked around it a little bit. Because a lot of times when I say face your fears, someone may say, I will, but can I do it like this? And the answer is no, you can't do it like that. You can't go around it. You can't go around it. You have to go straight through it. You could go, and honestly, many times the positions in your life and the circumstances that you find yourself in right now, whatever cycles you keep repeating, whatever, fears are still lingering and they've been lingering for way too long, it's almost always as a result of we think we're actually growing, we think we're actually healing, but we're not actually allowing ourselves to let go of those wounds that were inflicted upon us so long ago. We're still checking in with that fear. We're still checking in with that anxiety before we move forward. We get invited to something and we have to check in with our fear and anxiety and whatever else is bothering us. We have to check in with that before we actually make a decision if we want to do it, rather than making the decision of, do I actually just want to go experience this thing? There's two sort of perspectives I think that we need to have. And the first being a sort of relentless attitude for pursuing things that are outside of our comfort zone, a sort of indomitable spirited will to face our fears. That's the first level. And then the second level has to be enjoying the experience of when we're already past that wall. Letting go into the motions of life, letting things be as they are. Because the things that we fear are often much less significant than our minds make them out to be. And actually ruminating on them so much, obsessing over these fears, is what's creating so much of that emotional discomfort. That things going, slightly wrong is a part of life, but things going extremely wrong is a rare part of life. And the reason that we're nursing these wounds is oftentimes because we experienced a significant low and we don't want to experience that significant or extreme difficult low again. We don't have a built-in trust in reality to not screw us over. And I know that might resonate with some of you because oftentimes when it feels like not a lot is going right, you don't trust in reality, you don't trust in your life experience that things can go more right than they've ever gone. And that's what wounds, deep wounds, do. They shape our perspective into only believing that we are prone to the negativity and that we are not prone to the positives. But we need to learn to relax. And even though those wounds might be intense, even though they might cut deep, we have to realize that we're going to be okay. It's going to be all right. It will pass. And of course, more than anything, we cannot let that sort of nurturing feeling that we have for our wounds completely take over our life. Because when we nurture our wounds too much, that's when we become trapped in our comfort zone. When we observe and analyze our wounds too much, we become trapped in the cycles of comfort instead of bracing the discomfort of what's actually included in growing in life. The comfort that we're looking for, that security, is going to come as a result of mental fortitude. We can't always be very gentle. Once the wound struck, we have to be very gentle. We have to be very soft with moving forward. But now, in forgetting, we have to allow ourselves to be like a child in a way, like a dog or a puppy running through a field and just letting yourself live. And if that wound or any other wound becomes cut up again, so be it. You'll survive. And you'll learn to process it, you'll learn to heal, and you'll move on again. Forgetting it and learning to forget about it, it's not abandoning the part of yourself that was hurt or damaged. Rather, it's showing them the utmost respect, because when you enjoy your life, you're bringing that part of you with you. I know that's a kind of weird sentence, but let's say it like this. When you're enjoying your life, you heal those wounds because you finally stop scratching and picking at it. That's probably a more accurate way to represent it. No amount of reassurance, no amount of comforting is going to bring you the same relief than going through the discomfort of finally breaking through those limitations you set for yourself ever since that wound was inflicted. You have to start to think of yourself as someone who is more than what has occurred to them. You are not what has occurred to you. You are not the difficulties you've experienced. You are who you decide to be right now. Nothing else defines you except how you choose to move forward, literally right now. And no further amount of self-analyzing is going to help you live in the present moment. No psychological analysis is going to tell you how to laugh with your friends and just experience life for what it is and how to finally let go. There needs to be a sort of inner rebellion that takes place where you say, for the sake of myself, I'm going to bear the possibilities of me being inflicted with another 1,000 wounds rather than me having to repeat the same sort of miserable, stagnant cycle again and again. I'll repeat that. Be willing that as a result of living and experiencing your life, you can experience another 1,000 wounds rather than the price of staying exactly where you are now for the rest of your life. And I don't mean environmentally, but I mean mentally, and I mean in the terms of emotionally regulating yourself, where you're constantly maneuvering around the same fears and anxieties for the rest of your life. Because that's what happens. We don't develop into that maturity without first facing that difficulty. We don't become the embodied version of ourselves that we've always wanted to become without facing those fears and anxieties and without accommodating to them. Do not accommodate to them. They accommodate to you. And when they accommodate to you, yeah, they're going to create a lot of frustration, a lot of discomfort, a lot of anxiety and fear, of course. But the more they learn to accommodate to you, the more they learn to get out the way. They will get out the way. That's how the mind operates. That's how the mind learns. The more you don't maneuver and conform to fear and anxiety, the less the mind prioritizes the need to send you those emotions with such an intensive degree. So forgetting about it is, kind of just like a stamp of a much larger picture. And that is, it's more about the motions of forgetting about it, of allowing yourself to experience life, be present, and forget about it. It's what comes about trying to do that. Because you're going to see, once you try to forget about it, once you try to go and live your life, leave those wounds behind, you're going to be met with a series of frustrating and difficult emotions that you have to work through. And not work through psychoanalytically, but work through in the way where we're feeling those difficult emotions and all the while still attempting to experience life with presence and with enjoyment. And everybody will reach a point of frustration where they're eventually going to have to face this truth in large. It's just a matter of how long is it going to take. Because eventually nothing changes for so long that you grow so angry and the resentment starts to build that you actually start to blame your wounds instead of understanding that it was never the wound that was meant to motivate you to be better, to make a change in your life, but rather wounds are a part of life. Difficulties are simply a part of life. And it is up to us, it is up to you as the conscious awareness of yourself to make those choices. You are not what occurs to you. You are the background awareness that makes the decision of who to be and the person to embody as a result of those difficulties. Do not be scared of what will become of you in trying to let go, in trying to forget, in trying to experience and enjoy your life like you did when you were a kid. Do not be afraid. Rather, be extremely curious. What is the potential for you when you abandon all of those hidden little traits, all those hidden little maneuvers and accommodations we've been making to fear and anxiety? What will become of you? Something you could have never even imagined. And those wounds don't disappear, but they become battle scars for the person that you are now. Present, confident, empowered. It's all happening for you. You just have to awaken to the realization that there's no amount of blame to be put that's going to change anything. There's no amount of analyzing that's going to change anything. You have to go and live your life and brace for the discomfort that follows. That's it for this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like and subscribe. I'm going to link my book down below in the description. And if you're listening on Spotify, thank you for listening. And other than that, I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.